Hey, look at that. I didn't mess it up this week. Welcome in. Happy Friday, everybody. Another draft episode of the Barking Brown Show. I'm your host, Jacob, joined by the co-host of the Dawgs of War podcast, Mr. Kevin. How are you this evening, my man?
Jacob, doing well, sir. Thanks for having me. And I love that intro.
Dude, I'm telling you what. Seriously.
That gets you pumped up. When that beat drops, you're ready to pod, man.
I paid $15 for that on Fiverr.
Love Fiverr. I love Fiverr so much.
They did our main show's intro and all that stuff. I got a really cool voiceover for our regular episodes. I love Fiverr. I probably spent like $200 on there.
I've spent a lot of money on Fiverr over the years. I mean, their logos, their music production stuff, can't beat it.
There's this one guy, his name's like Pastor Steve or something like that. He does voiceovers and he's like serious, funny, whatever you want. He's the man with that. Guys, we are brought to you as always by our friends over at Homage Apparel. I couldn't find my Browns Homage shirt tonight, so I just put the Cavs on here. So
hey, nothing wrong with that. Big week for the Cavs. 71 points. That's
71 points. I went back and rewatched it yesterday because I was actually watching Monday Night Football when the horrible situation with DeMar Hamlin happened while the 71 was going on. But the Cavs look good, man. I'm really excited. So we're going to do linebackers today. For anybody, I did a video last week doing wide receivers. Everybody's like, you need to do DTs. And I'm like, well, I already did that. So there's defensive tackle video, wide receiver video, a couple of mock drafts. Next week will be mock draft 3.0. I'm actually going to do that live when I record. I'm going to go through the mock drafts so everybody sees kind of my crazy situation. Linebackers, I want to put a disclaimer for mine real quick. I don't know, Kevin, if yours is similar to my list, but all these guys I'm going to talk about are, I think, fringe top 100 / outside the top 100, which means they're day 3 picks. I think most of the guys that I have on my list are day 3 picks. I understand if you watch this, they are older players. All 3 of the ones that I picked are a little bit older, but Andrew Berry's kind of bent the guardrails there. And I think when it comes to linebackers, they're not worried about paying them. So they're going to take some day 3 linebackers regardless of probably some of the age because they're never going to pay them anyway. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there before we start. So I will start with you, man. Give me – it doesn't have to be the better one of the two, just whichever one you want to do.
Yeah, so like you, my disclaimers, mine are also, I think their ceiling would be 5th round, and mine are also a lot older. And so obviously, for you too, these aren't the top 5 linebackers in the draft. These are the linebackers that we think we have a shot at getting with our 8 picks, correct?
8, yep. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start off with Mr. Dorian Williams out of Tulane. When you look at the 789 eligible linebackers to be graded on PFF this year, he is number 45. He is 6'2", 230. Again, a little older. He is a senior, maybe redshirt senior. Don't quote me on that one. 2020, he's sophomore year, led the American Athletic Conference with 98 tackles, recorded double-digit tackles in 5 games. Now, I know the AAC is a hell of a lot different than even the Big Ten or the NFL, but we'll get to why I'm putting that in here. 2021, junior season, second on team in tackles with 73. 2022, this past season, 81 tackles and 50 assisted tackles. If you look at the Cotton Bowl upset win over USC this past weekend, he recorded 17 tackles. People regard him as one of those old school linebackers, right? He goes to no gloves, tapes his fingers up, gets down and dirty. 6'2", 230. So the 3 things that stick out to me about him and why I put him on my list here, not just because of where we could get him, and I think he'll fall down there, his size.
Yeah.
We talk about this a lot. Every podcast, article, blog, whatever, has been talking the last few years about how, we tried this whole system with the defense and drafting the smaller linebackers. When all of our linebackers, I should say most of them, are smaller than you and I, Jacob, there's a problem there. Consistency. The guy has had super great numbers at tackling every year he's played or, played a majority of the games at Tulane. And so that consistency leads into my biggest thing, which is kind of tied to it, is tackling. What has been the most common thing every Browns fan has yelled at their TV at the defense for the last 20 years is tackling. We always seem to be one of the worst tackling teams in football. This kid gets to the tackle. He makes the play. I like him for where he could fall to us. And the guy's a hustler. The guy's a beast. And I think we could turn him into a little bit of a project back there. So that's my number one pick.
It's funny that you say that, because as soon as you mentioned the make the tackle, I can hear my dad just because every game, tackle him. And that's what he says.
Four guys bounce off him. And then it just, so the guy makes tackles. The guy can get to the ball and make tackles. So that is right there. Take all the other stats out of it, as whatever, age, don't care. He can tackle.
You know, it's funny that when I watch these guys, that when I've been watching these linebackers, I actually have a ticker for missed tackles, because that is something I'm looking at. Just kind of because, I'm not going to watch all of their games. Typically don't have the time to do that. But, like, I've got that. I want to know, man, are you missing tackles? Are you, I understand it's going to happen. Like one of the guys I'm going to talk about in a little bit, I watched actually two of these guys. I watched them play against Tennessee because of how good Hendon Hooker was this year, and wanting to see kind of what they did against him. If he juked you out of your shoes, I might give you a little bit of credit, because that dude was a Heisman candidate for most of the season. So, but yeah, it's like outside of that, I don't want to do it. It's actually interesting that you bring up Williams, because I didn't get to him, but he is actually on my list to watch later this week. So I'm pretty excited to dive into that. So I'll start with my first guy. And I know all three of these, I'm going to butcher some names, because they got some great names in here. Owen Popo, I believe is his name, out of Auburn. He's a little bit smaller, again, a little bit older. I think he was actually born in 99 or 98. So he's really pushing it. And that's kind of why I have him at number 3 on my list and that sort of thing. But one thing I put down here, that he reacts really quickly. You look at him, and let me get his measurables for you up here real quick. 6'1", 226. It's going to be the smaller breed of linebackers. It is the breed of linebackers I think the Browns really like, except for Reggie Ragland. That dude's enormous. And
Big fan.
I've very vocally.
Old school linebacker, big dude, love him.
And
we got him off the street. No analytics involved there. We signed him. He's a big dude, and he's making a ton of tackles.
Big dude, go hit ball. Got it.
Yep.
he's done it perfectly.
Absolutely.
So I don't think I think that he's really good in space. Popo's really good in space, but because he breaks down well. So you don't see him in an open field situation with a running back or a shifty wide receiver, give him one move and miss. He breaks down fundamentally. He's a very fundamentally sound player. Breaks down, doesn't really let him get past him in that sort of sense. This being his biggest year, he had a little bit of injury last year with Auburn, but 91 total tackles this year, had 93 2 years ago in 2020. A career in 4 years, 15 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 2 interceptions. He is, I think, a better coverage linebacker, I think, mostly more so than against the run. You can occasionally catch him a little flat-footed. So he reacts well, but sometimes he's not in a good position to react. So you see some of that sort of stuff. And the thing that I put down, my final point with him, is when I watch his film, he doesn't stick out good or bad. If I wasn't watching a film where he is highlighted for me on every play, I may not fully know, because he's just not going to pop off the film. And that goes for a bad, he's not going to miss a tackle that goes for an 80-yard touchdown either. He just kind of does his job, and you could find him. I think he could play really well on special teams and be a rotational player. So
hey, we'll take it. We're not asking for much here.
Yeah. And I don't think their Browns are ever going to pay a linebacker. So I think day 3 guys is just what they're going to do. They're just going to cycle, maybe sometimes go on the 3rd round like they did with Jacob Phillips. So you are up, my man. What do you got, number 1?
Can I go off topic for 1 second and ask you
100%.
about that? You just said we're not going to pay linebackers. What are your thoughts? Because I agree with you. What are we doing with Taki?
That feels like a situation similar to Olivier Vernon and Tack McKinley, where I had heard, and nothing ever came about it, where they were kind of wanting to monitor it. I mean, if he's okay with it and signs a vet minimum, I just sign him to a vet minimum and just bring him back. And then whenever he's ready, let him go out there. I wanted to extend him before the injury. I don't think you give him a big deal, but if he's taking, less than $5 million, I'd sign him back.
Yeah, no, I'm with that 100%. It's going to be interesting to see what happens and how he recovers, but he was having a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was one of those, projects, quote unquote, that worked out.
Finally.
My next linebacker prospect, and I'm going to get called a homer for it. Don't care. Tommy Eichenberg, ladies and gentlemen, St. Ignatius High School in Cleveland, Ohio, the Ohio State University. This season, out of 789 eligible linebackers to be graded, he ranked number 17. He is 6'2", 239. In 2022, this season, number 1 in the Big Ten with 57 solo tackles. Number 4 in the Big Ten and number 10 in Power 5 with 92 tackles and 9.2 per game. Last year in the Rose Bowl, he recorded 17 tackles, including 11 solo. His first couple years at Ohio State, he played 5 games on special teams. I like that. He's a little versatile. Excuse me. Again, the theme here: the guy makes tackles. He's from Cleveland, but he reminds me of one of those big old farm boy football players.
Yeah.
So, like we said, again, is he the best linebacker in the draft? No. He's from Cleveland. He's an Ohio boy. He gets it. He obviously grew up a Browns fan. The guy knows how to get to the ball and make tackles. And again, Tommy Togiai is looking to be a bit of a bust, if you will. Knock on wood. I hope that changes. So we got Denzel. We hit. Missed on Togiai. Ohio State, you owe us one. Give me Eichenberg and make him be the next absolute stud back there as the new Mike.
No, it's perfect.
The Mike of the future. These are both my two choices. I'm going to be maybe a couple of years, like a Taki deal before they really start to shine. Obviously, it'd be great if it, right off the bat. But no, you take these guys in later rounds, understand that they're not going to probably be, right from the jump. You're starting Mike or starting linebacker. So,
I think as long as he's healthy, I think Anthony Walker's back at Mike at least to start the year. I would bring him back. I mean, I know he was having a career year. In this, 2.5 games that he played, it was just grading out just so much higher than he had been. I think these next 2 guys I've got, and Eichenberg as well, remind me of the guy of Anthony Walker in the sense of I think that's what you can get from these guys. I think they can be a very nice presence in the middle of that defense. They're not going to be superstars, but that's okay. You've got JOK, you've got Myles Garrett, you've got Denzel, you got Grant Delpit who's coming on really strong. You got all that stuff. Here's my guy. This is not my favorite, but this is the guy that actually entered this week when I started doing linebacker, a lot more linebacker study. This is the guy that I had at the top of my list, and now he's number 2 for me. It's Servokia Dennis from Pitt, 6'1", 230. Yeah, 6'1", 230. He's a senior, not a redshirt senior this time, so he's not quite as old. Let's see, 94 tackles this year, 82 tackles last year, 12 tackles for a loss and 7 sacks this year, 10 tackles for a loss and 4 sacks last year. Had an interception in both this year and last year, a couple pass defense as well. He's got the motor, man. He's got that motor. He is going to be moving at all times. He knows his assignment, sticks with it, doesn't blow assignment. He maintains his gap discipline. He's got pretty good hands to shed the blocks because he is, like I said, a little bit smaller, which you're going to get. He's pretty good at recognizing what's going on in front of him, and once he does react to it pretty quickly. He's a good tackler. He's a good athlete with good speed. He's just a little bit smaller. He can sometimes get caught out. He doesn't get caught out of position necessarily, like not doing his assignment, but he does get a little overzealous from times. He doesn't really take necessarily bad routes, to the tackle as much as he over pursues a lot. He goes flying in there with his hair on fire, but unlike Jacob Phillips, he goes flying into the place he's supposed to be with his hair on fire, not going over here when he was supposed to go to the completely other direction. But I don't know, man, like it's not going to exactly blow you away on tape, but you're never going to be like, man, who is number 7? He is just playing like crap today. He's never going to stand out as that guy either.
I'm fine with the smaller linebackers as long as they're not all small linebackers.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of them big boys back there to go along with the JOKs of the world. And hey, I'm ecstatic. And you brought up Anthony Walker. Mm-hmm. Remember, was he a household name in college when he played Northwestern? Absolutely not. He was a 5th round pick, but he was one of the best linebackers in the league this year. Yeah, he's been in the league for a few years now, but that is the dream kind of linebacker you want to get. in those later rounds, a guy that's going to really come into his own after a few years, kind of under the radar coming into the draft, but then he becomes one of the best. And so that is, if it was only that easy to get a bunch of A-walks back there, it'd be amazing.
We'd be in the best place ever.
Well, this is Cleveland, so we need to be realistic.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. So my last guy, number one on my list, this is a guy that I didn't even really watch much of him, and I hadn't even heard too awfully much of him until a couple of days ago. I started watching Ventrell Miller from Florida. Mm-hmm. First off, side note, Florida's got some dudes on that defense that are coming out in this draft. Because while I'm watching Miller, I'm seeing some other guys playing really well too, and I'm like, this is a freaking good defense. So he's got a really good power to speed combination. He is listed at 6'1", 226. He looks closer to 240 to me. I'm very interested to see what he measures in. Like sportsreference.com has him at 226. I saw somewhere have him at 235. Like, it's going to be really interesting to see where he comes in. He plays bigger than that 226, 230. I think he could stand to gain maybe 10 pounds or so to get it, unless he actually is at 240. I think he would be better at 240. Now, this is another redshirt senior. So I understand the situation, or the only redshirt senior. I'm sorry. I was thinking I got him mixed up. Redshirt senior, he's a little older, 8.5 tackles for loss this year, 74 total tackles. Didn't play much at all last year. Plays in 3 games, gets hurt. I'm sorry, played in 2 games, gets hurt. So I think it's kind of why he went back to college, because his last year prior to that as a starter, he had 52 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 3.5 sacks. He is very physical, plays with his hands really well. He keeps blockers from getting into his body. He doesn't really allow them to use their hands on him. Kind of hand fight, slaps him away, a little bit of shedding technique there. Another guy that I think can over pursue. I think that's the biggest knock on him, is he can over pursue. He gets a little overzealous, although he brings the boom on some of those. You'll see some toss plays and some wide zones where he'll come from the other side of the field like a heat-seeking missile and just slam, car wreck, slams into him. Now, if he's dealing with the athletic quarterbacks, this was another game I watched Tennessee play against. I want to see what he did against Hooker. He made some moves that shed Miller. There was some over pursuing of these mobile quarterbacks. He's a little indecisive in coverage. Once he understands his assignment and sees his man in the zone, he does react really well to it. I think he's a good coverage linebacker, but he can be a little indecisive if there's 2 people that may come into his zone and he's in zone coverage. You can see a little bit of a battle that goes on inside his head, but he's got all the physical tools. He stand to be just a little bit bigger, but I do think he's borderline top 100. If he snuck into the 3rd round, that would in no way, shape, or form surprise me. I think that's the kind of player he is.
For people living under a rock or just confused why we keep emphasizing size and age, if you haven't been following along during the Andrew Berry regime, he has a very specific formula in which he drafts players with. Specifically, linebacker are a lot smaller than what you would see in the olden days of the NFL, and they're all very, very young. Like, Berry loves him, some 21-year-olds.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
especially if they don't turn 21 until after the draft, then you're almost guaranteed to be on his radar and he's going to snatch you up.
And I'm fine with it, but I just hope that that's not, a huge weight in the equation.
Well,
some of these guys are studs and they're not 20 years old.
And I mean, you said it, we had this conversation offline as well. And I've talked to some other people. A lot of these linebackers that I think are good are 22, 23 years old. Like it's just, there's no other way to cut it. And you look at Isaiah Thomas was like 24 when they drafted him. So day 3, I think they are willing to bend that a little bit, but these are 3 players for me. And I like both of I haven't watched enough of Williams yet, but I do like Eichenberg, the Ohio State guy. I've mocked him to the Browns. I try so hard. Like one year, a couple of years ago, what was that, 2020 when they drafted? Was 2020 Tommy Togiai? Or no, it was last year. 2021. I actually mocked him and like somebody else once or twice, 2 Ohio State players, and they were like, oh, here we go again. I got so much hate. And I'm like, listen, like I've watched these. I think they're good football players. Like I want so bad to have good players come out of Ohio State so that I can say these things about them and not be a homer. But I do think Eichenberg, like, that dude works his ass off, and that's what I want in that room. I think in light of the Jadeveon Clowney interesting comments that were made today, more people that are team oriented, I think, would be a good addition there. So before we wrap this thing up, do you got any more thoughts on the draft, the season as a whole, or anything you want to?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. With Dorian Williams, freshman year, he didn't really do anything. And then, the next 3 years is really when he came into his own. Tommy Eichenberg redshirted his freshman year. He didn't play, or he played 5 games or something. So that's why they redshirted him. So I want linebackers that have been playing college ball 2, 3, 4 years, because they can show that consistency. They can show the ability to learn and get better at tackling. Because once again, what's the most important thing here? Linebackers that can tackle and preferably a little bigger than you and I. So when it comes to linebacker, I want a few years in college. Because how many freshman linebackers are out there making 10 tackles? You don't see it. But in terms of this draft, again, we don't have a first round pick for a long time. That might change, who knows? But we're gonna have to get very surgical in our mocks, and we're gonna be doing a lot of these 5th, 6th, 7th round mocks in Browns Nation for the next few months. That's all we can do. But no, Jadeveon Clowney, yeah, unfortunate. He's said these same things. These are the reasons why he left Tennessee and Houston. My final thoughts, though, after all that, is a shout out and prayers to the White Rhino, Peyton Hillis. It was reported that he's in critical condition after saving his children from drowning in the ocean. Someone posted on Facebook that he's coming out of it. He's improving. He's getting better, but there's still some issue with his lungs and kidneys. So prayers to Peyton Hillis. And that's what I got for the Browns.
That was the coolest thing ever as a kid to see a Brown on Madden when Peyton got it. It was like, it's like, I'm trying to remember. It was what?
That's our fan base, man. It's incredible.
It was like 2012, right? Like something like that. I was like 21 or something. But
yeah. I'll never forget that Patriots game the rest of my life. Like, I can still vividly remember him just flying all around the field against the Patriots. And never had a Browns.
Did he hurdle a dude in that game?
I believe so. I'm seeing him. Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I think I remember what you're talking about. Yeah. But the fact that, one, we beat Tom Brady. 2, we had a guy that actually, performed in a Browns uniform. It was just incredible. I'll never forget that game, that season. Yeah, things got sour after that, but I think he kind of came around later on, a few years later. Yeah. But yeah, I you don't like seen anyone down like that. So hopefully he gets better here soon.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming out here and taking the time with me real quick. So before we jump off here real quick, for anybody that doesn't know, can you tell them where they can find all your stuff?
Oh yeah, appreciate that. So I'm on Twitter at @KTuleta. There's no intelligent thought there. Twitter's my punching bag for the Browns, the Guardians, Cavs, Dayton Flyers basketball. Co-host the Dawgs of War podcast on all platforms with my co-host Raleigh Davis. We do episodes once a week, and I appreciate you having me on, man. This has been great. Let's do it again.
All right, man. I appreciate it. We'll talk again soon, guys. I say this every day, but I just want to make sure real quick before I do it. The most valuable thing you can give someone is some of your time. So we thank you guys once again for giving some of your time to us. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button, give that a little thumbs up. And we'll talk to you guys next time. As always, go Browns.